We'll do the mamer. This is a Melukotim Gimel. This is the third chelik in the Mamorim Melukotim. This is the second mamer, and this is Eila Mishpatim Tsim Lifnehem that the Rebbe said Motzi Shabbos Parshas Mishpatim, which was Mevorchim Achodesh Oder Rishon, and this was from the Rebbe's room in Tafshin Lamed Ches, and then later on it brings down. It was printed later on during that time on the Rishon Zayin or the Rishon Tafshin Lamed Ches is when it was published. All right, so let's do the matter. B'siyayte d'shmaya Mוצאי Shabbos Parshas Mishpatim Mevarch Machedesh Oder Rishon b'chedrei Hey Tafshin Lamed Ches. Ve'ela Mishpatim Asher Tsim Lifnehem. These are the mishpatim, the statutes, the rules, the laws that you should place before them. So the pasuk is talking about in the pastors that Hashem, as a continuation to Matan Torah, the Eibishter says, and the following are the laws that you should put before them. The Alter Rebbe in Torah is questioning the specific language. He has a question of the specific language in the Torah Reish Parsha Seinu, in the Torah in the beginning of the Parsha. Because we start off, the Alter Rebbe asks, we start off with Lifnehem. These are the rules that you put before them, in a plural, meanings before the Yidden. So the following first law, he starts off with kisikna, which talks individually. It should say kisikna. Tzorich lahavin, that we need to understand this pasuk, the language, the diuk, the lifneim mashma loshin rabbi. Before them seems we're talking here in a language of a plural, but then we start off by saying v'chisikna hu loshin yochid. Sikna is a language of a singular language. You and an individual will buy, versus talking to the community. He should say ki yiknu, when they will buy. When they, as a plural, when they will buy. So it seems to be the Alter Rebbe asks in Torah the language from Lifnehem, talking about the plural, and then he switches it kisikna to an individual. Gam Yadua Hadiuk, also it's known the question, Mipnei ma hischil kol hamishpatim bedin eved ivri davke. Why did he begin all of the laws with this particular law of an eved ivri specifically? Why start with this law? The Zohu gam kavonas hamedrash al haposik. This is also the medrash intent, the medrash on the pasuk in Kisikna Eved Ivri, in Ba'amroi, he says, Ani konisi eschem b'mitzrayim v'chulu. He says that, the medrash says that I bought you in Mitzrayim. So what the medrash is trying to tell us, that when it says here the pasuk begins with the mitzvah of kisiknu, is because the Eibishter is telling them that he actually acquired them in Mitzrayim, and that is levayir tam hascholos ve'ela mishpat bedin avedivri. That's what the Medrash wants to answer. Why did all the mishpatim, the laws, begin with the law of an Eved Ivri? Because that tells us that the Eibishter actually acquired us in Mitzrayim, and that is the first mitzvah, and that's why we are getting all the Eila Mishpatim because we are basically avodim from Hashem. He took us out from the Avdus of Mitzrayim and we became his avodim because he acquired us. This is the din of Eved Ivri when you acquire a Jewish servant, which the Yidden are Jewish servants of HaKadosh Baruch Hu. And there's also many other questions that we have, specifics on this verse. As explained in the Mamorim of our Rebbes, our leaders, those who followed, filled the place of the Alter Rebbe as they added different questions. So, inyan base. So the idea is the hine mashekosu ve'ela hamishpotim hu inyan kloli. This that he's saying, these are the laws. This is a general idea. It's before we start the law, he tells us something, a general idea that these are the mishpatim asher tosim lifneim. As the Rebbe will explain what the idea that he's trying to, what the pasuk is giving us over here. Move on Gam Mipirush Razal, as we understand from the interpretation of our sages of blessed memory, when they say Eila HaMishpatim is talking about generally how one should learn Torah. Shekoyi al klolus inyan limud haTorah. This refers to the general idea how on the way to study Torah. Eila hamishpatim asher tosim lifneim is not just these mitzvahs that follow, but all of Torah, it has to be in a way tosim lifneim. Bezehu gamkein mashekosu tosim loshin yochid dekoya al Moshe. And this is also the idea. It says the mishpatim, the statutes that you place before them, can say Eila HaMishpatim Asher Yasu or something like that. What is the meaning Tosim? You Moshe individually, because the pasuk says specifically Tosim in the Lashon Yachid, the Koyal Moshe. It goes on Moshe. So Moshe's has a central role here. The pasuk is telling us that he has to put the halachas lifneim. Why Moshe? Kinyonei shel Moshe hu inyan haTorah. Because Moshe's whole idea, what is Moshe about? Moshe is Torah. Ve'achar kach omer lifneim. So you, Tosi, Moshe brings it to Lifneim. Lifneim is Loshen Rabim, meaning that Moshe Rabbeinu is Mamshich, Tosim. He brings it down Lifneim to the Klal, to Kolech Dech Misrael. Hainu, Shal Yodei, through Moshe Hoyso Hamshochas HaTorah, L'kol Echad Ve'echad MiYisrael, Atzev Kol HaDoros. Through Moshe was the Torah extended to each and every one of the Jewish people to all the end of all generations. So this is Moshe Rabbeinu Tosim Lifneim for all Yidden. That's represented in this pasuk over there. We also find the pasuk says that the Torah is related specifically to Moshe. It says, Zichru Toiras Moshe Avdi. Remember the Torah of Moshe. Not, it doesn't say Toiras Hashem. It's Toiras Moshe, because Moshe is the one that was Mamshechit. Also add to the extent, Tinu Kamaschil Ledaber. You have a child who just starts to speak. So they say that She'avim Melamdei Torah. His father teaches him Torah. That's the first thing he does when he starts to speak. What does he teach him? What pasuk does he teach him? I know a pasuk. He teaches him the pasuk of Torah Tziva Lonu Moshe. So again, over here we have the idea that Moshe is the one that is being mamshich. It to the Torah comes from Moshe. So the number one general thing from the pasuk of Eila Hamishpatim Asher Tsim Lifneihem is to tell us that all the Mishpatim, all the Torah, comes through Tsim, through Moshe, and that comes Lifneihem. There's another general lesson that we take from this pasuk. There is also a general lesson, instruction in this pasuk. Also, how we're supposed to learn Torah. That it has to be in a very specific way. Kedrashas Razal, as the sages of blessed memory expounded, the pasuk says, "Tosim lifneihem," place it before them. Shaharav shelomat chulu choyzer v'shoyne hadover afilu kamo pa'amim. That if the Rav who learns needs to repeat and learn the same item, afilu kamo pa'amim, even many times. Tosim ad sheyavinu oimek haloche b'taima heitev. That he has to go ahead and repeat it even many times. So if he's the Rav Shalimet, the Rav is teaching, he has to go ahead and teach the matter many times until the students, Achiyavinu, till the students understand Oimek ha'alocha b'taima heitev, they understand the halacha with the reasoning very well. That's why the Torah says if tosim lifneihem, that you have to teach them in a way that it will be very clear, the depth of the halacha. The Rebbe adds to this language of what the sages say, which is the Gemara in Erevin, and in the Rambam. The Rebbe, Alter Rebbe, adds even more to this in the Hilchos Talmud Torah, in the end of Hilchos Talmud Torah. The tzorich ato losim lifneihem tam hamiyashiv talmudom umasimo belibom. That you have to put before them a reasoning that settles their study, and he adds also the word and it puts it in their heart. So v'yesh loymar, what is the extra settles their learning, so it should be so well understood that the study will be settled and also placed in their heart. V'yesh loymar the mashakosu ba'admur hazokim, what he says shemasimoi belibom, in their heart, mefarish. So he's interpreting the words of Ve'ela Mishpatim Asher Tosim Lifneihem, the Mashakosuv Tosim Lifneihem, Hainu Lipnim Yusam. That means Lifneihem, to their inside. The Zehu Kishemasimei Bahalev, when you put it into the heart, you take it to heart, that's what you are learning. You internalize it and it's in your heart. That is the meaning of the pasuk, Tosim Lifneim, to the pnimius, into their heart. That's the additional words of Simei Belibam, in their hearts, that it should be Lifneim Lipnimiusam. Shezehu inyan kloli belimud ha-Torah dekol echad ve'echad mi-Yisrael. This is a very general concept in the study of each and every individual of the Jewish people. Shaharei limud haTorah hi mitzvah shebegufay. Learning Torah is a mitzvah which is upon the person. It's not a mitzvah that can be done. Somebody's going to do it. You have to do it. It's a mitzvah on your person. This person, each person, kol echad mechuyva. Everybody is mechuyva. And as the pasuk says, vishinamtom levanecha. So we'll see in the pasuk it says it should be very clearly to your children, sharp. But if you're going to teach it to the children or the students sharp, you have to have it sharp too, so that you can teach it sharp. As the pasuk says, "Vishinantom levanecha." Dorshu Razal, what is the language of Vishinantom? Sheyehei divrei Torah shenunim umechudodim b'ficha. They should be sharp and ready and clear in your mouth. That is similar to the idea shahalocha tzroch Elias berura u'mesudara, that the locha needs to be clear and organized, as we quoted before from the Gemara. So this basic idea of a clear and organized, as we said from the Gemara and from the Alter Rebbe, that in the Shulchan Aruch, that everything should be settled with the reasoning, Talmud Masibei B'libam, or as the Alter Rebbe writes, and we learned in the Gemara, Kamapam Achi Yavinu Emek HaHalocha. Basically, the halachas need to be clear and organized. So that's the idea of Vishinantom levanecha. The zeu chiyuv al kol echad ve'echad miYisrael. So that's an obligation for each and every one of the Yidden, because it's not only that you have to teach it clearly organized for your student, for your children, but also for yourself. Shari nois of Allah chiyuv Vishinantom levanecha. Because in addition to the obligation to vishinamtom, to have it that learning in a way of shinun to your sons, it needs to be that sharpness in the words of Torah, also in the study of the father and the teacher himself. It's even more important. And first, you have to have the Rav. The Rav has to have that level of shinun in order to be able to give it over. Specifically, through the fact that first he has that sharpness in the words of Torah. Then later on, you can teach it to your children. So this is the other general idea we learn from the pasuk Eila Mishpatim Tsim Lifneim. So now we understand. Move on. Now we understand why we write this right after Aseres Hadibros. Move on. Mashekosu Eila Mishpatim Tsim Lifneim. That we say the laws, we give you instructions that it should be mishpatim miyad la'achar parshas Matan Torah, immediately after the portion of Matan Torah. Ki b'posuk zeh yesh nahiro klolis, because in this posuk there's a general instruction ba'ofen limud ha'Torah dekol echad ve'echad, how each one needs to learn individually, and as specifically in the two levels, learning by yourself and learning with the children, with the students. Hein belimud im atzmai, whether it's learning with yourself, and also when you're teaching your sons, literally your children, and also in the more general way, when we talk about talmidim, that the Rosh Chazal ala posik they translate Shnam Levanecha means teaching your students. So there is a general instruction here. Kidrosh Chazal ala posik al pi divri Razal hanal, based on the words of our sages that we mentioned earlier, Vishinantum Levanecha Tsim Lifnehem, and Be'iker Be'oifen Avodas Ha'odom Lekoinei. But mainly, besides the Hira Klolis in the way how to learn Torah, there is a way of how a Yid serves Hashem in this pasuk, and that's why this comes immediately after Matan Torah. So we have, with regard specifically to Torah, which is side individually and side for your children, aside for your students, and based Rosh Razal Hanal, which means that Shinantum Levanecha Ela Talmidim, and mainly in the word service of Avodas Ha'odom Lekoinei, how a Yid should serve Hashem. That's why this comes right after Matan Torah. Gimel. The Pasuk continues to explain the specifics of the service. And in the order of from the light to the heavy. And that's the style we have to go from step by step. The service to Hashem needs to be in a way, the ma'at agorshenu. Little by little, I'll chase him out, as the pasuk says, with regards to the Eretz Canaan, that the Eibishter will get rid of them little by little, not all at once. So that's the avodah in the pasuk described here, little by little, step by step, minakala lakoved, in the following psukim, how the avodah takes place. First we have Bascholas avodah hi b'mashekosuv kisikna eved ivri. So first we start off with the avodah that the pasuk says, when you sikna eved ivri. That's the avodah of an eved ivri. And in this, the Rebbe says, is included because the initial thought is that it may be an eved Kanani. An eved ivri means a Jewish slave who is owned by a Kanani, an eved ivri, meaning, no, we're talking about a yid that owned an eved Kanani, and you buy the eved Kanani. So there is a thought that there might be, the pasuk is talking about eved ivri. Who this eved ivri? Either he's ivri himself, or he's an eved shel ivri, but it's Kanani. So essentially, they're both included, even though the conclusion in Pshat is the eved ivri, an eved who is an ivri, but it also includes the fact that he's a Kanani. So, but in the avodah, the eved includes both services of an eved Kanani and an eved ivri. The bazeh klulim beis b'chinas ba'avodah. B'chinas eved Kanani. In avodah includes both the level of an eved Kanani, u'b'chinas eved ivri, and level of an eved ivri. As understood from this, that we find the Mechilta, which is also brought down in Rashi on the Torah, on the Pasuk. And the fact that Rashi brings it down means that this is something which is literal. The mezem muvan shezehu gam shezehu gama pipshute shel mikra. From this, that Rashi brings it down, that tells us that this also is according to the literal level of the pasuk. So when we say the Eved Ivri Hainu Eved Shehu Ivri, the Eved Ivri means a slave who is an Ivri. So Rashi, the Mechilta, Einoi Elo Avdei Shel Ivri. Maybe it means a servant of an Ivri, which means Eved Kenani Shalokachto Mi Yisrael. We're talking about a Canaanite Eved that you purchased it, Kisikna Eved Ivri, an Eved that belonged, that was under the ownership of an Ivri, and you purchase that. Shalokachto mi Yisrael, you buy it from a Yid, Sikna Eved Ivri, a slave from a Jew, but a Canaanite. Talmud Leimer Chulu. So that's why the pasuk says, as the Mechilta, no, that's not the pshat over here. The Hamaskone, the conclusion is, Shekoi al Eved Shu Ivri, we're talking about an Eved who is an Ivri. But the fact alone that there is a thought to say that maybe it means an Eved Kanani, that doesn't negate it entirely in Avodah from the general idea over here to serve Hashem also with the level of an Eved Kanani. Ach mikol mokim yeshnoi kasalka daitoch, and yet still there is a thought. Gam b'pshute shel mikra kinal, also in, as mentioned in the simple meaning of the pasuk, shu evet kanani, might mean evet kanani, utzrichim limud miyuchad, and you need a special pasuk, Talmud loymar, to teach you lishlol svarazu, to reject, negate this idea. So that means in the pasuk itself, you could still interpret that. But because we have the pasuk, in Devarim, so we know that it's only by Achicha. So we have a special pasuk telling it. But without that special extra pasuk, Eved Ivri can be Eved Kanani as well. Damas, the Mizem move on. So, because we need a special pasuk, Talmud Loimar, therefore the pasuk teaches us this extra pasuk, Ki imach lecha chicha in Devarim, lishlosh svarazu, to negate this idea. The Mezeh move on, sheyesh mokim Loimar. So from this we understand that there is room to say, B'terkos al kadaitoch, at least as they thought, the koyel gamal evet kanani, that this also refers to an evet kanani. When the pasuk says kisikna evet ivri, the evet could be evet kanani. So, therefore, we're saying that in avodas Hashem, Itake first talks about we had the evet kanani, and from the evet kanani you come to an evet ivri. Ubazeh, b'bchinas evet kanani utchilas havodah. The starting of the service is with the Salka Daitach, is with the Evet Kanani. That's the beginning of the service. And then the person gets elevated in his service. Then you get the higher level, you become an Evet Ivri. The ad later on in the parasha it talks about an Omar Ha'ivriya, about a maidservant, a Jewish maidservant, Omar Ha'ivriya, until you reach level Omar Ha'ivriya, could come, like we said later on, be explained. So we have these different avodas, Evet Kanani, Evet Ivri, and Omar Ha'ivriya. So what is this? The idea is as explained at length in the Mamorim, ubefrat, and especially bahadrush koisev olov kvet kedush admur hatzemach tzedek ba'ira Torah. The mamer that the Tzemach Tzedek writes about in Eira Torah, he says, Shadrusha Zemer Rabbeinu Hagod Nishmos Eiden, that this mimer from our great teacher, the Alter Rebbe, Nishmos Eiden Chulu, So he writes about that mamer, v'hudrush nichbat me'oid. It's a very honorable mamer. V'hu me'inyan madreges sadik v'rosho u'beinuni haniskar b'toira. That haniskar b'tanya. That discusses the levels of a tzaddik and a rosha and beinuni, which are mentioned in the Tanya. So what does he explain in that mamer? This is in Teres Chaim and other places where they are. So in the Mamorim, it explains over there the Yesh, Gimel, Madreges, Benefesh, Adam, that there are three levels in the soul of the person. The person in his soul has three levels. He has the level of Evet Kanani, and the level of an Evet Ivri, and the level of Amo Ivriya. What is these three levels? Hugimul Hamadreges, Nefesh Ruach Neshama. Those are the three levels of Nefesh Ruach Neshama. And over there is explained. Shehem Inyan Tzaddik V'Roshu Beinoni. That's the idea of a tzaddik and a Rasha and a Beinoni. That's the Nefesh Ruach Neshama. Bezehu Seder HaAvodah. That's the order of the Avodah. The Tchila Hu HaAvodah the B'chinas Evet Kanani. First, the Avodah is in the level of an Evet Kanani. You start with the level of Nefesh. And then you move up, then you move up to the level of Ruach, and then V'Amo Ivriya, you move up to the level of Amo Ivriya, that your service is with the part and gets higher as you continue the service. As we find in the Zoyar, in the section of the Sova, the Sova of Mishpatim, in the Parsha Mishpatim there. So over there it says, the Ben Noyach Kad Isyalid Yahavin Le Nafshachulu. That a Ben Noyach, as he's born, he gets the level of Nefesh. Zocha, once he merits, Yatir, he merits more. Yavin Le Ruchachulu. Then you give him the level of Ruach. Zocha Yatir, if he merits more, Yavin Le Nishmosa, you get the Neshama. So what it means is that immediately when he's born, that everybody gets the nefesh in the various different steps of the neshama. There's the nefesh, ruach, neshama. But when you're born, you get the first, you get the level of nefesh, which in the levels of neshama. That from that level, because of this level, the service is in the level level of nefesh. And then later on, through his service, he goes up to the level of ruach shehi, which is a higher level. Until you reach the level of neshama, to the level of and to the services that comes from these levels. When you reach the level of ruach, when you have the suchus, and you're given the level of ruach, avodah comes to the level that are connected, associated with ruach. And when you get to the level of neshama, your avodah gets in a higher level to the avodas that is connected to the level of neshama. The nefesh ruach and neshama b'kuntras avodah, as explained, the difference in the details of the Avodah Nefesh Ruach Neshama in Kuntras Avodah.